Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Whatsoever Things podcast, a podcast designed to stimulate your mind, tickle your funny bone, and encourage your faith.
Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things.
All right, Josh, so tell us the background of this podcast, kind of how it came about.
Okay, so I think maybe 3 years ago, you came up to me. Was it 3 years ago?
Yes, I'm glad you're giving me the credit.
Yeah, you came up to me and you said, Josh, we should start a podcast. Me, you, and your dad. It'd be great. And I think you were listening to the Unashamed guys, and you're kind of like wanting to get something kind of close to that. And I'm like...
Do our Sunday school class that way. Yeah. Sitting up there and record it, yeah.
And I thought it's a cool idea, but I thought, Mike, now there's so many podcasts out there. There's a million of them. And the odds of anybody listening to a new one now there's so many, it's not even going to happen. And I thought, nah, it's just not going to be a good idea. And then...
One day, like 3 weeks ago, I get a text.
Yeah.
We're doing a podcast.
I said, that's it. I'm starting a podcast. You in? I sent a text to Thomas, and he said, yeah. And then I'm like, I don't know how to even start. So I called Daniel. I'm like, Daniel, could you point us in the right direction? He says, if you do it with the church, we'll promote it. And I'm like, oh, this is going really fast. So,
and here we are.
Yeah. But the thing that changed was, I don't know, this is going to sound crazy, but the election happened, or was happening. And it seemed like...
You realize you're now a terrorist.
And I know
this
isn't going to happen.
Republican white guy, so now you're a terrorist.
The most hated man in America.
Yes.
I know it's cliche to say voices aren't being heard. We need to get our voices heard. But I felt like I need to do something about the world I live in. And I know what I'll do. I'll get a microphone in front of me and talk about how we need to do something about the world we live in.
You'll get advertising and all this stuff, yeah.
Uh-huh. I don't know.
Well, when you said that, back in the day, you're like, nobody's going to listen to it. Nobody may, but if we can help change one person, is it worth it?
Well, I think now,
it is.
Since I've had that thought, it was kind of like a moment, and I'm like, Mike's on board. Since then, I've always thought that this church particularly, but just in the community around, there is untapped wisdom that people have. That you come to church, you have your service, you talk to like your friends real quick, and then the ones they leave. But there's an untapped wisdom, and if you could bring that wisdom and distribute it across the church, that would be good. And you could bring someone in who has knowledge about a certain field or a certain thing, and now you can distribute that to everybody. Not that we have that kind of knowledge, but we can bring people in and ask them questions. We can poke at them.
Well, also learning their backstory, you know what I mean? Because I think it can help anyway, especially somebody that's young in the faith or even just young in general, understanding that most people have a history that they're not necessarily proud of. They've done things but you can come back from that. You can be redeemed. We are saved.
There was times Josh was like, Daniel says we can't talk about this, or I'm like, Josh, okay, listen.
He didn't say
this is getting us started, and this is a podcast
Right.
for the church. So exactly like you said, we have people like Gary Van Leuven that has been CEOs of companies that's been able to do it his whole life and still be a Christian.
Yeah,
that's something I struggle with at work. I can be the best Christian, then I got to tell somebody their proposed development is junk, and I got to say it like that to give them no indication they have a chance of getting something approved or stuff like that.
Didn't you have something to do with the opening of strip clubs or something?
No, I had.
I think you were on TV, actually.
I extended the alcohol sales times in the COE. So, but we have people. We have people. We have a bulk of our church is the greatest generation, right? And so we have the opportunity. We have the responsibility, I think, as where we are at our age, as being the patriarch or of our family, or where we are in the church, to discuss these things, learn from them, but also give an example of what a evangelical Republican white man or whatever we are. I mean, you don't have to be a Republican or what.
Yeah,
what we are. When we
you're a Christian and you're not a Republican, you're dead to me. I'm just kidding.
This isn't I don't think it should be a political podcast.
But this gives us an opportunity to then also talk about different aspects of the church. I listen to a Rural Ranger podcast, which is done out of the church in Lakeland,
Victory?
Victory. It's a national Rural Ranger podcast, and they operate. It's two guys out of a little closet in Victory, and so. But we have ministries and we have people that we can provide content to the church, and then from that, if we get rolling and we have some sort of symmetry, then we can look at doing one
On our own.
On our own, you know.
That one could be political.
That one could be
This
political.
one can't be.
Yes.
Oh, our own
But-
podcast will
That
say.
doesn't mean
But
you
I
can't
think,
touch on
but it
all.
also can
Yeah, I
show
know,
people
yeah.
can show people that hey, maybe what Daniel wants to do is record your Sunday school class, your powerful Sunday school class, record that and provide it. It just gives them an example of what that's what Daniel's talking
The
about.
other thing I would like this podcast to be is there, especially younger people, my age and younger. I'm 35. Is that right?
I don't know, Josh. How old are you?
I think I'm 35. I have to do the math. I ain't doing that right now. But my age and younger, people, they think different than everyone my age and older. I'm telling you, there's a difference. You can say homosexuality is wrong because the Bible says so, and people my age and younger will look at you and say, well, why should I listen to the Bible for my morality? And if you can't answer that question, then you're not really much good to them. And so there is this new way of reaching people where you have to explain why the Bible is a valuable thing for morality. You have to explain why Jesus' death and resurrection on the cross is the center, and that matters more than everything else, and how you build from that. And if you can't explain yourself to the younger people, you're going to lose them. They think differently. There's a podcast I listen to, William Lane Craig podcast called Defenders. It's his Sunday school class. He's really good. He's one of the top philosophers, Christian philosophers, and he teaches a Sunday school class. So these young guys come to his class, and then they don't go to church afterwards. And he asked them one time, he says, how come you guys don't join us for corporate worship and get together and things like that? And
he calls it corporate worship.
Yeah, he does.
That's
He's
funny.
He's a philosopher.
I like that.
But anyways, they told him there's nothing there for us. They said we can come here and we can grill you on stuff, and he has good answers because he's well thought out. He's thought a lot about what he believes, and so he can answer these things. But when he goes to church, I don't know how to say it. I want to say it's religion, but it's not just that. There's no, well, what about this? Well, how come that? Well, how come this? You don't get that.
Yeah.
And if we can make a space where we can say, like, look, this is why you should follow the scriptures. This is why the writings of Moses are important. This is why the writings of Paul are important. This is why the Gospels are important. And this is why they're valuable, not do this because the Bible says so. I don't know. And I want to try and make a space for that. And I think this is the medium for that. Because it's hard, it's long, and then people could, I don't know if we'll set up an email account or come to church and talk to us, actually. That'd be the best way to do it if you have a question.
Well, and we're also able to expand upon this push, which when we discussed it in the board meeting, it was a time I was just really thinking we need to actually do this. We need to go this way and have this more of this digital campus emphasis in this content, and the pastor's daily call was really popular, and you saw the benefit of how that the reasons I don't have Facebook, because what you say can live forever, is the opportunities for this church to people to know who pastor is or to know who the pastors are and what's going on. A long time from now, you can come back to that digital library. You're not going to have to come check out a disc.
Yeah.
It's going to be available in a real easy form. We'll be able to dig up past events and be a part of that is really cool, because we're only how far? I mean, March of 2020, did you kind of start? When did you really start looking at doing online and really gearing up?
I've been poking around with it since about 6 years.
Yeah.
But March is when I had to really drop everything else.
Right. So we're coming up on a year, and to start helping Daniel build on what he's been doing and get people involved. I mean, if we can, when we do Rural Rangers, if we do a Rural Ranger subject on a podcast and we come and we interview Rick Stagg, the people, if we do interview the oldest person in the church, type of deal, or just whatever. Get people involved that don't listen digital. It might help them listen to it and then bridge that opportunity for them to receive the word in another format and then come in here on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
And provide a little entertainment.
Yes, it would. Yes, and learn.
Yeah.
And you get someone like Rose Lewis from this church that's written books and has a long history. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But we could also learn from it.
Oh yeah.
And
I think it's untapped wisdom,
Yes.
and we got to tap into it somehow. I think this is a good way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to interview other. Not just this shouldn't be just like a deeply conservative Christian podcast. I know some liberal Christians I would love to interview and have a conversation with them.
So
as
we
long
can
as
tell
we're
them
not.
they're wrong.
Yeah,
I'm just
if
kidding.
you look
we
at-
don't need to beat up on them.
but if you look
you
at
know
our
what I mean?
church, a bulk of the people that have been new members or new people to the church to have pizza with the pastor, a lot of them come just straight from the Catholic Church. I grew up Catholic, but they're straight from the Catholic Church. They're straight from the Methodist Church, and they just wanted something different. So they have really fresh adult. They grew up. They had life experiences under that religion, and they're at our church. So we have an opportunity to talk to people
Right.
like that
Yeah.
and see, what kind of triggered you, or what did you dislike, and learn from it.
Right.
So let's interview each other first. Or not first, we've been talking about other things. But about background, and I'll start with Thomas.
Oh boy!
Thomas, the brother-in-law of Josh Hamblen.
Don't tell people that. I don't need them knowing.
And by the way, I'll say that my father-in-law, Jerry, after that trip he made to Dublin, like, you could be his favorite son-in-law if
Yeah?
you were in the family.
Right.
So
I can dig it.
Yeah, he really just
Hey, you should
loved. Yes.
keep that relationship going. Just kidding.
You're a terrible person, Josh.
I'm just kidding.
I said yes.
edit-
It's
edit-
being recorded.
I said
Edit
yes.
that- edit that part.
I bled with Thomas. I went through, a 6-hour war with him, so I know who he is.
There were great memories made that day, and some I want to forget.
Yes.
It's just
We did one of those.
Can we have a podcast about some of those memories? Because I'm curious now.
Well, we did. Or we can talk about it now. Whatever. We did an adventure race, and it was,
Oh yeah.
a bike,
That's what you were
run,
talking about.
canoe.
yeah.
Well, we tested our relationships that day.
Yes.
Yes. Because beforehand, Josh said, "Hey, we need like the leader of our group, so that way, like, if we get out there and a decision needs to be made, that person can make the decision, and everybody has to go with it." So Josh decided I should be the leader. So
how
then
I
we
do
get
it.
out there, and a decision needs to be made, and he's arguing with me tooth and nail,
Oh, dude.
and then just takes off. And I was so
Dude.
aggravated.
When
'Cause
I
he's
set
like,
you up as a leader, it's for a puppet position. Like, if I need you to change, you have to listen to me.
we are following
have to take all the
we're
heat.
following a very basic map of where to go and what to do, and we're lost because Josh is like, we've got to go, and I'm trying to get him to be like, we have to stop and figure out where we are.
That's the
before
purpose
we
of the
know
race, to
where to go.
Map it out and use coordinates.
This could
You'll
get
get
ugly,
there.
Daniel.
You'll get
Yeah.
right there.
I don't know if we
And-
should.
But we did the let's
should
run
probe
around
too
like
deep
crazy
into
men,
this.
and we'll come upon it.
Yep.
And so we finished.
Actually, we didn't do bad.
I don't think
We
we
didn't
did
find
bad.
one of the markers, so
So
I
it
don't.
was a battle of whether or not to read the instructions.
No, there's waypoints scattered out throughout this
in,
place.
in your map, you have a
have a
very
map.
basic map. You have a map that might have 3% of the details of your topography on it. So, like, where there might be a hill or there might be a road, like, your map might show 3 roads in this area that you're in, but there might be 17 roads, and it only shows a couple of them. So you're like, okay, I don't know which one that would. It's very aggravating. It tests your
oh yeah, there was a husband
teamwork.
and wife there that were.
yeah.
They almost got a divorce.
If they didn't get a divorce, I commend them. She was very upset with him, and
I felt bad at one point. They did a change up where one element, I think was it the running element or one of them, like only two people could go.
Oh yeah, it was the
of your
walk.
four.
Yeah, 'cause-
So you had a walkie-talkie, one person sit
Yeah,
with
so
a map, and we had to sit like on a bench.
The two people who ran didn't have a map, and so you had to guide them through the
and
walkie-talkie.
so there was like an hour of running where I'm just sitting on the bench getting sun, just relaxing, and it's
me
like,
and Thomas are wearing ourselves out.
Yeah.
And
running around trying to
we
find
come
these
to this
things.
like dead end, and Mike's like, all right, now take the one, there should be two splits in front of you, and we're looking at 4 splits. So they're like, well, take the one to the right. We're like, well, which one to the right? We don't know which 2 are marked on your map because we have 4 of them in front of us. So we're going down 100 yards or more, and then turn around and coming back, and then going down another one, turning, and then come to find out it's like nowhere even near where the splits were. It's down at some creek
Because
crossing underneath us.
we weren't using the coordinates. We weren't putting the compass on it and going.
Yeah, the rest of them, they had coordinates and compass, and they'll say head, this many degrees northwest. Don't ask me.
We tried to inch it out. Like, it looks like you're at 100 steps. Go to the bathroom 100 steps off the northeast corner.
And I think where we lost it was the canoe part. I think before that.
No, we did fine.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay. You two may have done fine, but me and my buddy Brent were in a canoe that doesn't have a keel.
That's where me and Mike were sitting in the sun, just
The
relaxing.
ditch is this wide. They went
It has nothing.
and then went backwards.
pinballing. They can't see that on the
There's
podcast. They
I
were
believe it's
pinballing
called.
off the.
I believe it's called the keel that runs
Yeah.
underneath it to help keep your canoe straight. It doesn't have that, so it's just a flat bottom. So it's swaying all over the place, hitting this side, hitting that side. We're going too fast because every time it turns to the right or the left, there's a bend in the river. We're running into the other side because we're going too fast. Oh,
So then we were
aggravated.
aggravated. So we get on the bike. We're like, we're going to make up time on the bike. And we're on the road. And it takes you, this is in the Ocala Forest, right to one of those sugar sand roads. And we just hit that road and everyone's tire sinks. And it was just like, there's no way.
yep.
You can't even pedal a bike through this.
And then we realized that Josh had taken us like a mile out of the way.
Josh had
because-
taken
We were
us
supposed to
a
go
because
this
he
other
didn't-
way.
right,
And we
He
went,
didn't want to stop and look
like,
at the
it
map.
was like the last leg
We didn't
that
have
was
time.
supposed to give you trouble. We started. So we never made it through that because it was all just
We
sugar
should have.
sand. You couldn't.
Looking back, we should have picked somebody and just followed them.
No, we should
And
have
then
just,
at the end,
Thomas, did you pick up your
Just
bike and
beat 'em.
throw it?
I believe I may have.
there were some
Fits
words
may
said.
have been thrown. Words may have been said. Like I said, great memories were made.
Yes.
Some not so great memories were made.
I remember afterwards
There were
talking
many
to Mike
highs,
Rumer,
many lows.
talking to Mike like, well, I'm related to him, so. Or I'm married into his family, so whatever.
So Thomas, tell us your background. Tell us maybe how you became a Christian and kind of how you ended up here at the Oxford Assembly of God.
I ended up here because my mother made me. That's kind of true. Kind of, not necessarily not true.
What year did your mom pass?
2015.
Oh, 2000. Okay, because
Yeah,
I
it'll be
started
it'll be
coming
6 years.
when I was
2
in
months.
90.
Wow.
I started coming here in
right.
98 when Laura and I were dating,
Mm-hmm.
but we lived in Tallahassee, and then we moved here in 2008. And I'm just trying to. In 2008, were you a regular here? Were you in like?
Not really a regular.
You might have
because
been in youth or something.
in 2008 I was 20
Okay.
in 2008.
Yeah,
so I started coming here when I was like 12. We had moved down from Memphis, Tennessee, and we lived next door to Faye Stevenson over in Summerfield.
Faye. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Miss Faye. She
Miss
was
Faye, yes, she was great.
Yeah, she became my grandmother.
Yes,
She
okay.
was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
She took care of me. So Faye Stevenson was our neighbor. She became my grandmother kind of thing and took care of us a lot. So
Became Rusty's roommate.
yeah,
That's a good story.
yeah,
too.
it is. Yeah, I can't wait to get Russ. I got to know more about his life. And so Faye had invited us to come to church, and so we started coming. And back then we were doing Friday Night Fire. I was like 12 at the time, I think it was. Yeah, it was back in the day. So I mean, we're talking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When I started coming here, and so running through, we had Garrett McKenzie as the youth pastor, and then there was Joe Ray. Trying to remember who was after him. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So I was coming here from the time I was like 12 to, I don't know, 18 or 19, and then as most youth do, they stray away and they go out and they party and do whatever the stuff they want to do. And so for, I don't know, the better part of 10 years, I came once
Sporadically,
what I mean. I did the normal Christian thing. Hey, it's Easter. Get up and go to church. Let's go. You know what I'm saying?
And you say that, and that's what I kind of look forward to. Some of the Ranger boys that were bus kids, that this is their church, but even though they at 18 they quit coming, but every once in a while, Greg, the red, he'll stop in, and I'm expecting
He
that
comes regularly.
and then you wonder, once they get tied down, do they make this their church?
Some when they get out of prison, they'll start coming.
Yes,
Yeah. When I got out of prison, that was something I said I was gonna do. Is come to. I'm just kidding. I never went to prison.
You were on the road to hell.
So, no.
When we
Yes.
let you off.
Yes.
Okay.
Listen, the road to hell was paved with good intentions,
That's right.
and I had bad intentions, so I was paving that sucker at a high rate of speed. And
So during this time, did you sense God talking to you, or did you sense that you should, as the right thing, I should go to church as the right thing? Or
so I always I don't know. I never had questions about my faith or anything like that. Like I never was like, oh, God's not real. That's not. I was just. I think I put it in a thing of like, all I'm doing is going out and I'm partying and I'm drinking and this sort of thing. And I wasn't doing any kind of hard drugs or you know what I mean? Alcohol was my biggest thing and staying out all night. But I was putting myself in a category of, if I'm going to go to the same hell that a child molester is going to go to, then like I don't, like I knew it, like you know what I'm saying? Like I believed in God, heaven, hell, but I was like, if I'm going to go to the same place they're going to for having a couple of beers, then this is dumb.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, just it's funny because probably about a year ago, maybe a little more than it was Christmas of last year. For whatever reason, I'd put a Phil Robertson book in my Amazon wish list. And it was The Theft of America's Soul. I don't even know, I hadn't had any thoughts about, you know what I mean, that what Phil preaches about or the Bible or anything like that. I put it in there. Couldn't tell you why. And for Christmas, that was one of the gifts my wife got me, was that book. And so, I don't know, 2 months later, I started reading it. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop it. And, by the time I finished it, then I listened to the Unashamed podcast. And then remember I was having a conversation with Josh. Josh was like, you're not like turning spiritual on me, are you? I was like, dude, I don't know what's going on right now. All I know is something happened. Like a whole worldly view changed. I couldn't tell you what's going on, but I think it's good. And he's like, okay, hey, we do a Bible study on Thursdays if you want to come. And
I noticed it. I noticed you were changing. Thomas is like really paying attention to his morality. Not that you weren't unmoral, but you were really paying attention.
Yes.
You're like, I've gotten rid of this app or I've gotten rid of that, you were saying. And I'm like, man, maybe you should come to Bible study. And I was thinking that throughout the week, and then I called you and invited you. And then he became the darling of Bible study.
yeah, everybody loves me.
I know. Everywhere he goes, people love him.
He became the darling of the Omega
I
trip
know.
in Dublin.
I get kicked out of every nest of every time Thomas comes in. It's not even fair.
Well, sorry, Josh.
He'll be the darling of this podcast.
Probably. If people could see me, then I definitely would be. I'm just, you know what I mean? That good looking.
Anyway,
so you
read the book, you changed.
But you've been coming to church.
Yeah, off and
regular,
on. I mean,
more regular than. Because
yeah,
I didn't know he would talk about his brother-in-law Thomas. I'm like, I didn't know much he had a brother.
Yeah, I was coming off and on. You know what I mean? But nothing regular, and unfortunately now.
But you grew up as part of the youth.
Yeah.
You did youth, and then as college or the 18 those years and then did you start coming back more once you got married?
I did, but it wasn't there wasn't a correlation between the two. It wasn't like, I mean, I guess right after me and my wife got married, the church was doing the Marriage on the Rocks class, and so Marriage on the Rock, whatever. See, that's my old days coming back. Like, on the rocks. Yeah, the church was doing the Marriage on the Rock class, and so we came to that, and I highly recommend that to anyone. I mean, if you've been if you've been married for 50 years, or you're just married, or you're thinking about getting married, I do recommend it. I thought both of us benefited a lot from it. And,
was I in that class with you?
Yeah, you were in it. You and Missy were in it.
It was. Well, I don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple other couples in there with us. There were 4 or 5 couples.
Yeah, I went because another couple wouldn't go, and I said, "Well, I'll go with you."
Yeah.
And I was teaching Sunday school, so I had to get somebody to cover my Sunday school class to go to Marriage on the Rock class.
On the Rock.
And Michael, How did you get here?
How did I get here?
Yeah.
Well,
I got my
Once upon a
truck. They
time.
turned it on.
so I grew up Catholic. So what that means is my parents woke up, took me, dropped me off at Catholic church, and I did the Sunday school. I got confirmed as a Catholic. You either go to Catholic school or you go to Sunday school, and you reach a place where you get confirmed. And I did that, and then I stopped going because that's what you do.
Because you're
As
done.
a Catholic, yes, you're done. You
got
pass.
your,
Yes,
you got your work done.
and so I got confirmed in probably 8th grade. So I pretty much quit going in high school. But in high school, they had a group, a club or a group called Young Life, which was really, really spiritually light. It met one night a week, and a meeting was you sing these songs. They weren't Christian songs, but they were just feel good songs. And then you do some fun activities, and then they had like a camp you could go to. And so I did Young Life, and it was just, you were just around, it got you around positive people that just were not there, not into just the other stuff when you're in high school. And I went on a Young Life retreat camp in New York, and that was more spiritual in a sense, but not, I don't know what religion it would be. I don't know if it's a Methodist or, and then,
Probably Christian.
so from that,
religion.
but the Young Life leader, there was 2 leaders, and like the not the head guy, the under leader, ended up really taking my friend Eric in. His mom died, and his stepdad he didn't have a relationship with, and my friend Eric lived with this guy John, who was like the Young Life guy. He would come on campus. He went to high school there. Everyone knew John. And it sort of had a weird relationship. We always kind of thought, we were like, Eric, John likes you. But he was our Young Life leader. And I'll come back to that.
Oh.
And so Eric, when he graduated, he lived with John. And John was really good with Eric. And we would do almost like a Bible study. But it was more of a goals, but with a light Christian background. I think John's dad might have been a Methodist minister. But Eric and I ended up I moved to Tallahassee, and then Eric followed a semester or 2 later, and we lived together. And John came to visit, and his car broke down, and he ended up living with us for a while. and we would still do this Young Life talk, and just talk about goals and just achieving stuff. And during that time, I was working at a place, and a guy there who was, I'd say, is Baptist, was really took me and really started evangelizing me. And so this sort of young life in college, like when I'm the peak of my binge drinking, and I just started having these.
So you're drinking, you're partying, and then you're hitting up Young
Yes,
Life.
and then I'm getting with but I had these people in my life, John that's living with us. It was kind of weird, and Light just I have 2 Bibles that he gave me, and what John introduced me to, this was before I moved to Tallahassee, was Jesus wants to have a relationship with you. Whereas a Catholic, it's God. I believed in God. I believed in the Trinity, but that's all I knew. I just believed it because because that was just ingrained in me. But John introduced the relationship. Jesus wants to have a personal relationship with you. And that kind of always stuck, like, what does that mean? And then with this guy Kevin coming in and sort of under the Baptists evangelize and go forth and spread the gospel, he was kind of filling in some of those gaps. So I was really starting to just have these thoughts. And I remember we were at a blues club way out in the woods, at either New Year's or some sort of special night. And I was just hit me right there. I was like, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. And I went and sat in the car and just started like praying. I didn't say the sinner's prayer because I wasn't sure what that was, but I was like, this lifestyle is not for me. And so then really got involved with Kevin and he was in a Bible study, doing this Thursday night Bible study with these guys. And then Kevin and I moved in together, and then some of the guys from the Bible study moved in. We had like 5 of us in this house, and it was a constant Bible study. And that's where that's when I accepted Christ as my Savior. and it started to click. And I remember the first thing I did is I went and I called John, who was still living with my old roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Oh, that's great." I was like, "Hey, I became a Christian." And he was kind of like, "Oh, that's great." Well, tragically, not even last year, John died. He was on drugs. He's a homosexual living that lifestyle, and he died. And he always was a homosexual, I believe. The way he took Eric in, and Eric said he never tried anything with him.
Yeah.
And but that shows me. So, in going back to when we lived in this house with these Christian guys, my favorite artist at the time was this guy called Dennis Jernigan, who has this worship music that is just awesome. Dennis Jernigan was a homosexual that changed his life, and so I tell people, people that are sinning, that know Christ, they can, God works through people and through circumstances you don't understand. So anyway, so John tragically died. A guy shot him in the back of the head.
No.
And I just reached out to the family. I was like, I just want you to know what John means to me. And so it, I sent them this really long email, got their email address, and just kind of went through how John's working in my life led me to where I am now as a Christian. And then I met my wife, Laura, in Tallahassee, and she's Assembly of God, and we were dating where we knew we were going to get engaged. We would just like, hey, we're in college, we're dating, we want to live right. We don't need to be together on the weekends a lot. So we came here to Wildwood like most weekends and hung out with her and stayed at her parents' house. And so I would come to Oxford back when we were in the small sanctuary. And that was, and it was, I would
What
say
year
it's
was this?
97, 98. We got married in 99. And
So I'm trying to remember the first time I met you. I can't remember.
When I can remember, we were going to her parents' house, and you would be asleep in Ted's yard before you went to work.
Yeah, that's Josh.
Hey, I had
And
my
so-
own struggles.
Yeah. And so he would drive there and park.
used to
Yeah,
work
he would
for-
drive there and park and sleep in his car until Ted
Came out.
came out.
So my thinking was, if I hurried up and got ready to go to work, because I would ride with Ted to Inverness. We worked at Inverness. I would ride with him to Inverness.
Yeah.
If I'd hurry up and get to his house, I could sleep and then just move from my truck to his truck and sleep till the way to Inverness, and then I'd wake up and I'd be at work.
Yeah. So and
it
I just remember
actually-
seeing this kid in this truck sleeping all the time. But during that
that's
time,
how
I would
you
say
met me.
I would kind of characterize the church as a little bit more Pentecostal than it kind of is now. And so we were going to Baptist church in Tallahassee. And then Laura and I got married. But I would, coming here a lot, I would see the Pentecostal side. And we were going to Baptist churches in Tallahassee. And which I kind of characterize it, the Baptist really promotes going out and saving people. But to me, I saw it as in order to go talk and meet with Thomas and share the gospel and want him to hang out with me, I needed to be able to play golf. I need to look better. I need to have attributes that people would want to hang out with me. And I was wrong thinking that, more not trusting God, but more wanting people to hang out with me. And I just kind of thought I didn't like that aspect. I understood you need to spread the gospel, but I thought there was more to it. So I liked sort of the Pentecostal Assembly of God. And so when we got married, we moved to Lake County, and we tried a couple Assembly of God churches there. And I
Name dropping.
remember this one pastor. Yeah, he had everybody come up. This one pastor just started blowing in your face and expected you to fall out. And I was just, but we ended up not finding a church there. As a young married couple in Orlando, going to churches in Orlando, you'd think there would be a lot of opportunities. We just nothing worked. So we ended up having our first child, and Reagan would wake up and Laura would feed her, and that took about an hour. And it's like, hey, we could drive to church during that time, and so we did that. We drove here and attended here, and that was, by that time it was in the gym. And then we bought land and we built the house here and moved here full time in 2008. And I was put on the board. But I think the Assembly of God faith is the way. I became a member of the Baptist church when we lived in Tallahassee, and then started attending Oxford Assembly full time as our church. And but I was baptized I was christened as a Catholic,
You're
baptized
christened.
under the Baptist church, and now attend Oxford Assembly of God. And so I kind of live my life, I kind of want to honor what Kevin did and what John did, so when I see them again, and I talk to Kevin every once in a while, he lives in Defuniak, but I kind of feel like I have a responsibility, and that's something I feel I'm missing in my life, in my Pentecostal Assembly of God walk, is that mentoring. But as you have, I've worked with Royal Rangers I work with kids, and I do that through them. And so
I can remember way back though, because I knew you, but I remember there was a time where something happened to you where I call it like you saw the light moment, even though you were going to church and you were doing all this stuff. Because I remember all of a sudden you were talking about everything about the Bible, and you were in it, and we got to do. It was a different mic. I remember the mic before, and then there was that moment. Do you remember that moment?
I do, and it was really, there's two people that for some reason when I'm around them, in not just every day, but they motivate me, and that's you and Brian. And Brian was here in Sunday. Brian lives in Tallahassee. When him and I are together, he just motivates me in either business, in different aspects. And you and I and Rusty were hanging out. We would go to the property and
have fires
underneath the stars and have biblical talk. So then I went, from here I became a board member. I taught the 20 to Life Sunday School. I've done Rangers for years. And so that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, I remember those nights though. That we would talk about all kinds
we
of
could
stuff.
get together. So we would have these bonfires and we would just talk for hours. And we did his bachelor party out at Camp Sozo. Me, you, and him. We camped out in February.
That was a crazy
under the
time,
stars,
too.
and it was cool. And the fighter jets were doing bombing runs at night, and where we were in our tents, they would come over and swoop over and turn, and then you'd hear the. It was cool,
Yeah,
that's cool. So you and Brian motivate me, and that was the hanging out, and just it all just kind of clicked.
I don't know how I've ever motivated you.
Well, it's a motivation.
The least motivated person on the planet is motivating someone.
I know, but
this is so
it's
weird.
The way you tie in,
God works in mysterious ways, people. There it is.
The Old Testament, and it's like, oh yeah, this is wow. It just so that's where I am.
All right, Josh, I'm pretend I know nothing about you.
Okay. Well, you actually don't. So.
What's your Social Security number?
589. Whoa.
Almost got him.
Whew,
just start out telling us how you came about to be here.
Okay, so I became a Christian at 7 years old at a VBS. End of story. That was it.
It was great. We'll see you guys next week.
Mine's way
That
better.
was my salvation story.
I was at Dave's CC Club, and
I remember though. So we went to a church. I was little. I started going to this church in '93, so I was in 3rd grade. That's how old I was. But I remember the church we went to before, and they didn't tell anybody they were having financial troubles. I learned this after the fact. I didn't know this then. But one Sunday they said, "This is our last Sunday. We're closing the doors." And so we were without a church. Our family was without a church for a while. And I remember we stayed home and had church, and Dad wouldn't trust because back then my mom and Dad were still fairly new Christians, and they didn't know what churches believed what. They'd always gone to this one church, and so Dad would go around to different churches to test them out. To find the one he came, and he came here and he liked it, and so.
But when you say family, your family probably was majority of the church. They're so big.
When we came to this church, yes, there was this was just the brick building here. There was the Driggers and a few other families,
And now the Hamblens.
the
with
Hamblens
10
moved
people.
in, and they're like, "Oh, you're part of that big family with the van." We had this. We drove for real. We drove a church van. We had a church van. We drove into a church with the church van. I don't know.
Look, another church is coming to visit.
I don't think Oxford Assembly of God had a church van then, so it looked like it was the church bus. But it was VBS here. I remember we had a bunch of them, but I remember the first time I met Chuck Padgett. He was doing a VBS here, and he had just been saved. I mean, well, not just. He was still a new Christian-ish. How long? We don't have time.
No, I got email.
Anyways, and I remember Chuck preached this message where I felt so guilty inside that I asked Jesus to come into my heart. And this is just the first time I remember. And then the second night, he asked if you wanted to ask Jesus into your heart. And I raised my hand and I asked Jesus into my heart. And I did it again and again and again. And I think a lot of kids do that. They do it every time. And so I don't know the date or whatever I became saved. But I did, as I grew up, I did have these moments that like shifted the way I think and the way I see the world. And I can pinpoint those moments. I know when I was dating your sister, and my sister passed away. She had Down syndrome, and she was like, we were tight, we were close, and she passed away, and that shifted everything. I don't know where I'd be if that event would not have taken place. And
it didn't shift you away.
No, that's the thing. When a loved one dies too, you're on a knife's edge. Either you fall into God or you totally fall away. And I fell into it.
Wow.
And I remember I told Misty, I was dating Misty, but I don't know about what my intentions were.
I know they weren't good.
But after that,
brother-in-law.
it wasn't. I asked Misty to marry me, and I said we got to do this right, and we're gonna go, and we're gonna, And Misty.
Well, hold on. Before you asked her to marry, did you go to her father? To get from? Hey, can I ask for your daughter's hand in marriage? Oh, you didn't do that. Well, okay. So you didn't do it completely the right way.
I'm a very independent-minded person, and I told her, I said, look, we're adults, and
weren't you 17?
We don't have. Well, yeah, that's true. I wasn't an adult. We don't have to ask permission.
So she was an adult, but you weren't.
Yeah, well, I don't have to ask permission from anybody. I'm putting this ring on your finger, and we'll tell your mom what our plans are. And I remember we went to go talk to her, and she said, "You're gonna tell her?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tell her." I walked in there, and I just went to the corner of the house and sat down and looked at my shoes the whole time. I was so scared. I never even said anything. And so Misty's like, "Hey, Mom," and she points to her ring, and I wanted to tear a hole through the wall. But anyways,
I thought my mom was the sweetest person on the planet.
She was scary.
Why was she so scary?
She didn't like me. And at first, and you know what? Knowing who I was back then, I don't blame her. I do not blame her. Anyways, so the moment my sister passed away shifted the way, all of a sudden, eternity was real. I wanted to know where my sister went. And I wanted to, what is going on here? What is the realness of this? And there are other moments that have done that. I guess I could get into at least two more. I know one was we went to a missions trip. Misty always wanted to do dental work for poor kids in a third world country. I'm like, that's kind of a weird goal, but if that's what your life goal is. And so she had this opportunity to do that with her boss to go to another country. And I'm like, you are not going to a third world country. They take blonde hair girls and they hold them up for ransom. And if I can't pay, they're going to kill you. That's how they do things. You're not going to a third world country. And finally I said, fine, I'll go with you. But I ain't doing anything.
And anybody that knows my sister knows you tell her something,
yeah,
she's going to do the opposite.
It's not like
you ain't telling her what to do.
But so I went. So I was going to go with her, and they had these meetings for this missions trip, and it was this other church. It wasn't our church or any group.
The one I went with.
Yeah, the same group that you went with later. Anyways, they're like, we would really like to meet Josh. Is he going to come to any of these meetings? And she had to lie and tell him he's working late. But really, I would come home I'm not going to that meeting. I'm against this whole thing. What a waste of time to go on a missions trip. And I remember once I got there.
He invited me later.
Yeah. I've gone on a bunch of them. I've probably gone on 6 or 7 of them.
Well, Russ, you went with
since
you on
then.
one too,
yeah,
right?
Russ went with me on one too. I went there. and I saw these poor orphan kids, and they had nothing, and the people around had nothing, and they were the happiest, lovingest people I've ever met. And it was totally shifted my thought process. I met a kid who was digging in the trash for something to play with, and the trash there isn't like trash here. Trash here is pretty nasty, but it's filthy trash. They throw away things that we flush down the toilet. We'll just say that. It's nasty. And this kid, I bought him every toy I could, and I was just giving it to him. And it was against the rules because you weren't allowed to do that, but I was doing it anyways. And I just fell in love with this boy, and totally shifted the way I thought. So from missions trips, I always thought, what a waste of money. We could hire somebody to do the work that we're going to do. It's ridiculous. But I didn't think about the growth of my own soul going on this. And man, it grew. So that was a
whole topic.
We could jump on that.
I never thought of it that way though. There kind of would. I don't know. Maybe you're saying how you could hire somebody.
Oh yeah, I was there pouring
that's
concrete.
That's a common theme. You will hear people. I'll just buy your lunches for a mega. I don't need to go on a trip with you.
Yeah, but that's not what it's
why
about.
Aren't you guys hiring bricklayers to go? Why are you doing labor?
Yeah, I never thought of like, hey, if let's give the people there a job.
That's what I was thinking.
Help stimulate their, what I'm saying, their, I don't want to say economy, because it's not like we're putting in it, it's not like you're putting in enough money to help it, but you might be helping that family or that group of people in a financial sense, but then it helps everybody else.
You need to see real poverty,
right?
And see real love.
A pastor will typically have, when we go, he has some people that he hires. It needs to be done that, let the pastor hire some people, but they need us there as much as they need our money.
We visited one of the kids' house.
Oh, wow.
And it was a surprise visit, so they didn't know we were coming. Well, they had found out that we were coming, and they went and bought chocolate. And this is why they surprised, because they'll spend their whole year's savings, and they bought chocolate. And there's little chocolate bars there. And they're like, hey, have some chocolate. And they're like, no, thank you. You can't say no, thank you. They really want to be hospitable, and so you eat their chocolate and like, gosh, I'm hiding money to places.
Everyone thinks their chocolate's good, and it's not.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Especially in European bloc countries.
And then I remember they wanted to give us stuff, and they went and they found their wedding picture, and they got a wedding picture and gave it to one of the guys, and he's like, I can't take your wedding picture. He's like, please take this with you to America. And so he still uses it as his bookmark in his Bible. Like he had their wedding picture in my Bible. Cool. That's just how they are. And it's just like, my head just exploded. It totally shifted the way I thought. I've never been more wrong about something. But when you go and experience it, I think that is
that's how my mission trip, I went on my first one just a couple of months ago, and the whole time I was thinking like, I want to help do something somewhere else, and they're like, oh, we're going to Dublin, and I'm thinking Ireland. So I'm like, dude, we're doing it big time. Like, this is awesome. And they're like, yeah, it's like 6 hours away. I was like, what? Dublin's way further than that. They're like, oh, Dublin, Georgia. And I'm like, I was kind of like a little down. I was like, well, I guess, it's just right over there. And then I get there, and I'm like, I can't wait to help these people. And then you get there, and you realize you might be helping them, but dude, they're helping you so much more than you could ever do for them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Let me tell you the biggest shift that's happened, and then that'll be the end of mine. And maybe this is a process. I'm really independent-minded, and I'm really critical about everything. I'm hypercritical, probably, about things. And I remember when I was a teenager, I opened up a, Popular Science magazine. I don't know what it was. And they were talking about this guy in China, or maybe it was Japan. I think it was China. He was drilling into the Earth's crust, and he wanted to be the first person to drill through the Earth's crust and hit the mantle underneath. And I'm like, what? Surely we've gone to that. We've drilled that far before. Mm-hmm. And I was reading this article to see why is he doing this, and it was just to be the first one to discover what's beneath the Earth's crust. I'm like, discover? We know what's beneath the Earth's crust. It's lava. It's the mantle. And in school, you got that Earth cut in half, and it shows all the layers. And then it hit me like,
the core.
No one's ever been down there to look. How the heck do we know what's down there? And I know there's reasons to know what's down there. There's a magnetic field, so obviously there must be molten iron that's making a magnetic field because it's liquid and it's moving around. So we have reasons to believe what's in the center of the earth. I'm not saying that, but the fact that no one's ever looked and nobody told me, we didn't really know.
Right.
And so I started putting my criticism towards everything, but I was scared because I believed in the Bible and I was a Christian. I did not want to put my criticism towards the Bible. And I was like, oh man, that's just a recipe for disaster. So I wouldn't do it. And then I watched The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I came to know C.S. Lewis, who is my number one favorite author. I love this guy.
You've given me a book from him.
I've given both of y'all books.
Yes.
Did I give you a
Well,
book,
you gave me a
Daniel?
Jordan Peterson book. And
Technically, my book was given to me from Rusty,
Oh, that's
which you
true.
gave to him.
Well,
But
I'll return Rusty a new one. I don't know.
you've given me some books, yes.
Anyways, all of a sudden I read this guy who was an atheist and became a Christian, who was a critical thinker, and he poured his criticism straight at the scriptures, straight at the idea of God and everything, and came out as a Christian. I'm like, what in the world? And so I opened up the floodgates, and I became a person who read the Bible very critically, and I wanted to test everything, and I wanted to make sure that what is actually true is more important to me than anything else. And I found reasons for believing the Bible that are very strong and very good, and I don't think a lot of Christians know it. But that's why I like the Doubting Thomas guy. That's because it's me, and it's like I can give it a thumbs up. And you can question my faith. You can come at me with anything you want. I promise you, you haven't pressed it harder than I've pressed it. You haven't pushed it as far as I have. I've been very critical of it. And this whole thing has shifted to where my belief in a resurrected Savior, which sounds crazy, but it is so strong. I'm telling you, as a philosophy, the Christian philosophy is the strongest philosophy in the world today. There is not a better philosophy that explains the world you live in than the Christian philosophy, and I can't say I can prove it, but I can show you why that is. And I know it because I've really been critical of it. So that was one of the biggest shifts in my thinking. And from then on, I became kind of a different kind of Christian.
Yeah.
I became a Christian who's like, okay, this is why it is. If you think it's different, show me. And there's this old, I thought it was in Proverbs, but it's not in Proverbs. I don't know if Confucius says it, but he says, a wise man, if a fool corrects a wise man, I'm sorry. If you correct a wise man, he'll love you for it. If you correct a fool, he'll hate you for it. And the truth and the point of it is the fool has his beliefs, his values are connected to his ego, and so he's defending himself. Whereas the wise man is only concerned with what's true, what things are true. And if you can show me where I'm wrong, I'll love you for it. And I want to play the part of the wise man. I don't want to play the part of the fool. And
I love proving you wrong, Josh.
Yeah.
So. Well, along those,
I'm not saying I'm perfect at that because I have a lot
along
of ego
those
tied
same
to things,
lines.
but
There's something you did that helped me in my walk a couple of weeks ago, and probably a couple of months ago now in Sunday school that I never said anything to you about, but
good because it'll go to my head.
yeah, I think in Genesis where God came down, I think he was talking to Abraham about he was going to destroy this city because there was nobody in there. When I read, so in my Doubting Thomas mind, I'm reading this story and I'm like, it bugged me so much because at the time I was thinking, God's really letting a man talk quote unquote sense into him, like you're going to destroy the city, and he's like, for the sake of 100
sounds like Abraham's
and it's
bartering
like,
with God.
Abraham's really bartering. And then you went over the same story in Sunday school, and I was like, at first I was kind of like, oh, here we go, this story again, I don't want to hear this. And then you were like, God knew there was nobody there that was righteous. He wasn't letting Abraham talk him down. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. Like, just a light bulb went off, because all I was thinking was, there's no way God's letting a man talk him down to, you know what I mean? Yeah. Not just like, if he knows how many people are there, you know what I mean? Like he knows. But I wasn't connecting the dots of God's not letting this guy talk him down. He's saying, yeah, for the sake of 1,000, for the sake of 100, for the sake of 10, because he already knows they're not there. But that's not how my brain was putting it together. My brain was just like, oh, this isn't real. God wouldn't let a guy talk him down. But I don't know.
I remember in middle school a kid telling me, well, maybe it was high school, because I was talking about Jesus or something. I don't know. But he said, Jesus is a cop-out. Because every time they would ask him a tough question, he would just answer it with a question. That's what politicians do.
Right.
I mean, come on, man. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. And I'm reading the Bible, I'm like, oh, man, he keeps doing this. Why does he keep doing this? And it wasn't until I became a more mature Christian, I'm like, oh, in every question, there's an assumption. And Jesus asks the question in return, showing the assumption that the people are making in their question. And he's playing 3D chess against these guys, and they don't even get it.
Well, that's what something that would come when I was listening to the Bible on CD, and it has that guy with the Australian accent.
No.
But when you start off, you're in the Old Testament, and you hear this when you're not reading it, and you can't, your eyes can't glaze on other scripture. But when you're hearing it, it gets like, God gives you the how you repent, all the different scenarios and different edicts you have to do. You have to the calf, and you've got to do this incense, and you've got to do all this stuff. And then it's like, if you do this, I'm going to bring wrath on you. And they do it. And then he says, if you do it again, and when you hear it and you don't, it bothers you. It's like God knew, but now he's giving in to him. And he's changing his mind, and God doesn't change his mind.
That's how I
quit listening to it on disc. I'm like, I don't like it like this. I like having the book. I like thinking and say, well, let me go look at something else and kind of and find more about it. So I quit listening to it on CD. I gave it to a family member. Well, hold on. Let's at least have the Bible like a scripture. So I'll read.
Let's at least have the Bible.
So this is what
How long is this?
the name we're looking at is.
I'm not listening to that.
Whatsoever? What's the name? Whatsoever?
Oh, yeah, we were thinking about whatsoever things.
Whatsoever things. So I have the NIV, so it's not going to say that in the scripture, but it's based off of Philippians 4 verse 8, and it's Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So, how did you come up with that?
I just figured we'd be talking about a large variety of things, and if we could narrow it down to like, well, it's going to be admirable and true things. I don't know.
So,
I don't know.
So if you want to live right, you need to think
These
right.
are the things we're going to talk about.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
Hopefully, we can stay within those borders.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, y'all. We just want to thank you for listening today to the Whatsoever Things podcast. The Whatsoever Things podcast is just a group of guys sitting around talking about their faith, and it does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the leadership of Oxford Assembly of God. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You can subscribe in whatever your favorite podcast application is. And if you'd like to find out more information about our church, you can visit our website at www.oxfordag.org. That's oxfordag.org. We'll see you next time.